The Mystery of Annie555. Nephi had always been a kid who found solace in television. Growing up gay in a small Texas town, he often felt out of place. But the sitcom Gimme a Break was his escape. There was something about Nell Carter. The warmth in her laugh, the way she commanded a scene, the way she made a chaotic household feel like home. She was everything. Funny, fierce, and full of heart. As a kid, he'd hum the Gimme a Break theme song to himself like a lullaby. But one lyric always tripped him up. Did it say, "I find me know where I belong," or "I finally know where I belong"? The ambiguity haunted him into adulthood, and one day, on a whim, he decided to solve the mystery. The year was 1998. Nephi was in his early 20s, working at a record store in Houston, trying to figure out his life. One night, after closing up, he went home and wrote a letter to Nell Carter herself, care of her agent, politely asking for clarification. He didn't expect a response. But 2 weeks later, an email landed in his AOL inbox from Annie555@AOL.com. Subject: Gimme a Break theme song. I finally know where I belong. That was it. No greeting, no signature, just the answer, plain and simple. Nephi's heart swelled. He immediately wrote back, thanking Annie555 profusely for taking the time to reply. But the days passed, then weeks, and no response came. Something about the sender's name nagged at him. Annie555. It felt oddly deliberate. He searched online, scrolling through fan forums, old interviews. Nothing. Then he remembered Nell Carter had recently played Miss Hannigan in Annie on stage. That couldn't be a coincidence. Could Annie555 be Nell herself? His obsession deepened. He pored over every scrap of information he could find, but Annie555 remained a ghost. Finally, unable to shake the mystery, he booked a flight to New York City. Stepping off the plane at LaGuardia, Nephi was hit by the sticky August heat and the smell of jet fuel. He had never been to New York before. It was louder, faster, and grittier than he imagined. He clutched a slip of paper where he had scrawled a few names and addresses, leads he'd pieced together from Broadway message boards and old playbills. His first stop was the Martin Beck Theater, where Annie had played. A stagehand, skeptical at first, finally softened when Nephi explained he was a longtime fan of Nell Carter. "She's something else," the man said, shaking his head fondly. "Tough as nails, but has a heart of gold." But when Nephi asked about Annie555, the guy shrugged. "Never heard of it. Maybe someone in her inner circle?" That led Nephi to the Upper West Side, where he found an old colleague of Nell's, a retired Broadway dresser who had worked with her on multiple shows. They met in a tiny cafe where an oscillating fan pushed around the humid air. The man took a sip of his coffee and smirked. "Ann Kaiser." Nephi blinked. "Who?" "Nell's partner. They've been together for years. Ann handles a lot of Nell's business, especially email. You probably got a response from her." Nephi sat back, stunned. Annie555. Ann Kaiser. The answer had been right there all along. Nell Carter had been part of a love story the world barely knew, and in some small way, Nephi had been touched by it. Back in his hotel room, he turned on the news and booted up his chunky Toshiba laptop. He stared at the unanswered email from Annie555. Now that he knew the truth, he had to write back. To Annie555@AOL.com. Subject: Thank you, again. Dear Ann, I just wanted to say thank you again. Not just for answering my question, but for unknowingly sending me on an adventure. I didn't know who you were before, but I do now. I hope you don't mind that I was curious. It's just that Nell meant so much to me growing up, and when I got that email, I felt like I was touching a little piece of the past. I love knowing that someone who truly cares about her is the one looking out for her. That makes me happy. Sending all my best to you and Nell. Nephi. He hit send before he could overthink it. The next morning, an email waited in his inbox. From Annie555 at AOL.com. Hi Nephi. I'm glad you figured it out. I didn't answer your first reply because I wasn't sure if you were just a curious fan or someone looking for more than an answer about a theme song. Now I see that you are the kind of person Nell has always loved. Someone who finds joy in music. Someone who searches for meaning in the little things. Nell is doing well. She's as tough and funny as ever. I'll tell her about you. Take care, Anne. Nephi read it twice, then a third time. Somehow, he felt lighter. The mystery was solved, but what mattered more was what he had found along the way. Proof that the people he admired most weren't just characters on a screen. They were real. They had love in their lives, and sometimes, if you were lucky, you could reach across time and space and touch them, if only for a moment. He closed his laptop, humming the theme song softly to himself. I finally know where I belong. And for the first time in a long time, he believed it.